Hola amigos, Rory Foster here. I have been a Spanish teacher my whole professional life, and as co-founder and co-owner of this organization, Common Ground International, where we began with medical Spanish and teaching medical Spanish to healthcare workers, I get asked this question all the time. What is the best way to learn medical Spanish? And I would say that my answer, the details, the specifics of my answer have morphed over the years, but a handful of components have stayed the same. And that's what I want to share with you today. The best way for you to learn medical Spanish is going to include some of these components in your mix of learning activities and how you set up your atmosphere around you to truly put you in a position to learn as much clinical Spanish as possible for your conversations with patients. And so your winning learning mix includes these next few components. First of all, effective strategies. You have to know how to learn a language in order to be effective at learning a language. The right content. Spanish is so huge, another language is so huge. I mean, think about it. The whole vast array of things that you could talk about, communicate, do, job functions you could perform, all of that exists in Spanish. But you don't need all of that. You just need the right content. You need to focus on what it is that impacts your relationship directly with your Spanish-speaking patients. So you've got to focus in on the right content. You need a helpful community, because going at this alone, it's so easy to give up and not make progress if you're going at it alone. So you need a helpful community, and you need fruitful communication opportunities. Not just any old opportunity to communicate, but something that's actually going to yield results for you, a fruitful communication opportunity. And last but not least, language learning is directly tied to how much exposure you have to that language. And so I want to help you identify some effective strategies, narrow down and find the right content, build a helpful community around you, and make sure that you are participating in fruitful communication opportunities and make sure that you are maximizing your exposure. If you can get these 5 things down, this truly is the best way to learn medical Spanish. Let's take a look at some effective strategies. I've got 3 I want to share with you. The first strategy is it's okay. Okay? It's okay. You need to be a lighthearted learner. You are going to make mistakes, and I want you to get to the place where you can say, it's all right. I can make a mistake. It's not the end of the world. Now, please don't misunderstand me here. I want to clarify what I'm saying. I am not promoting in the least the irresponsible use of Spanish with your patients. You as a learner need to consider your own Spanish as a piece of your scope of practice. And when you are beyond your limits, you need language support and language help in those clinical interactions. What I'm referring to is your approach to learning language and practicing Spanish. We would make the argument that a clinical scenario is probably not the best time to be practicing Spanish. That's when you're performing your job functions, right? So when you're practicing Spanish and getting better at Spanish, you need to have the perspective that, okay, I can make mistakes. That's okay. Because clinically, when you make mistakes, you open the door to huge, grave concerns, right? Losses, injury to patients, misunderstandings that have consequences that are serious for both the patient and for you and your practice. And so that's not what we're talking about. We're talking about your approach as a learner to Spanish. We would never promote the foolish use of another language in the clinical setting. In fact, that's why we've created Certified Spanish, a bilingual medical Spanish proficiency test that certifies you to speak Spanish responsibly with your patients. So we're talking about your approach to learning here. You've got to be okay making little mistakes here and there in your journey toward proficiency. So be a lighthearted learner. You're going to make mistakes, and it is very true that you don't need to communicate perfectly to communicate effectively. Take me, for example. I've been at this for more than 3 decades. I've been a Spanish teacher forever, but I've also been a Spanish learner. I consider myself always learning more and, making mistakes that I am tired of making, but for some reason I have a hard time not making them. But, I can do anything I want in Spanish. I can make business deals in Latin America. I can have fun with friends in Latin America, make jokes and spend time socially. I can console people going through hard times. I can lead our team, our small team of 12 people in Spanish, and I can do all of these things very effectively, but very rarely is everything I say perfect. Now, I've got great Spanish, and you can ask anyone on the team here at Common Ground, is Rory's Spanish pretty good? And they'll say, yeah, it's amazing. And then you ask them in the same breath, you ask them, well, do you notice when he makes mistakes? Oh yeah, he makes mistakes. Just like I make mistakes when I'm trying to speak English to him. You don't have to speak perfectly. So be a lighthearted learner. Get that expectation off of the table. And because there are language studies that say the more you're concerned about perfection, the more you're going to struggle with making progress. However, the more lighthearted you are, the more okay you are with ambiguity, the steeper your learning curve is, and the more progress you make, the better off you are. So, regardless of your personality, regardless of your characteristics, regardless of the high stakes environment you work in, try to be a lighthearted learner when it comes to Spanish, and you will be able to experience this kind of growth with your communicative abilities. Strategy number 2, narrow your focus. There is so much to learn with Spanish. It can be overwhelming. When I was a student, I'm not a healthcare guy. When I was a student, I wanted to learn it all. I wanted to be able to navigate these circles and those circles and this circle over here. And that was my goal. I was just in it for the Spanish. That's my degree, part of a master's degree in Spanish. And so that was my goal. But that's not your goal. You have your profession, you have your career, you have your life. You want to work more effectively with your patients. And so narrow your focus down to that. And one of the strategies we use with our students in our courses is we talk about your 5 patient profiles. Who are your 5 most common patients that you see day in, day out, week in, week out, month in, month out? Who are those 5 patients? If you can focus on those 5 patients and you think through, what are the high frequency questions that are asked and the answers that are given? Not only questions you ask, but questions the patient asks. Not only answers the patient gives you to your questions, but the answers you give the patient to their questions. What are those questions? Line them all out. 1 column for each patient, right? And then not only those questions, but how about the conditions that these patients have in those 5 patient profiles? What are the most common conditions? And not just the conditions, what are the symptoms of those conditions? What's the most common history of those conditions? And once you start, what are the treatments for those conditions? What are the follow-up plans for those conditions? Once you start lining all of this out, you begin to narrow your focus. This is the Spanish I need to know. I don't need to know that over there. I need to know this. I need to know these 5 categories of conversations that I have routinely are going to guide you in making sure that you're getting the highest yield for your studies. Now, not only vocabulary, we're now talking grammar. We're talking vocabulary and grammar. So the grammar that you need when you are taking a history, for example. Well, you need to know the past tense to talk about historical things in their medical situation, right? You probably need to know the present perfect because you want to say, have you ever, or have had this and that. So now we've got past tense, we've got present perfect tense. You probably give some instructions here and there. Okay, so there's commands. You definitely talk about present day symptoms and how you're feeling today and what you're experiencing today. Okay, so there's present tense verbs. Okay, so once you line out your 5 patient profiles, you begin to analyze them. That's going to tell you exactly the vocabulary you need and exactly the grammar that you need in order to be effective in those conversations. The great thing about the 5 patient profiles strategy is that it helps you focus in on your highest yield topics to study. So, effective strategy number 2, narrow your focus. Remember, the first strategy was be a lighthearted learner. Now, effective strategy number 3, pace yourself. I don't know about you, but sometimes I can get so excited about something, I'll just jump in headlong, and that's my whole world for, a day, a week, a month, and that's all I'm doing, and I'm afire and I'm burning hot with that topic, right? But I also fizzle out pretty quickly. You know that learning a language is a long-term prospect, right? It's a project that's going to take you not days, not weeks, not months, probably years. And so you got to pace yourself if you're going to last. You have to pace yourself if you're going to be able to stick through it and truly accomplish the kinds of language proficiency goals that you're looking for. And so we like to use the rule of 30. The rule of 30 says that on a consistency level, you want to find 30 minutes 3 times a week. So 30 minutes 3 times a week, and over the course of the month and the year, you are racking up hours and hours and hours of study time, and all it took was 30 minutes at a time. Poco a poco se anda lejos. Little by little, you can go a long way. You can find 30 minutes. We're not even going to have that conversation. You know you can find 30 minutes of downtime, of wasted time, whether you're scrolling or watching something or just zoning out or doing that thing you wish you didn't do, but it takes up your time anyway. You can find 30 minutes 3 times a week. Not only is this going to help you with consistency, but it also helps you with pacing. You know what? You can't start with 1,000 terms and say, I'm going to tackle these. Just start with 30. You're doing 30 minutes 3 times a week. Also focus on 30 terms, the rule of 30. Focus on 30 terms. You learn those front to back, Spanish to English, English to Spanish, and then you can move on. You set that pile aside, and then you move on to your next pile of 30. You go through those, and then you review that first pile, you review the second pile, and then you get on to your next pile, and little by little, you are building a huge bank of medical Spanish vocabulary. Imagine this. Okay, you've got 30 minutes 3 times a week. That's 90 minutes a week. Let's just say that we set the bar low, and you only want to master 30 terms a week. 30 terms a week. And let's say you take a couple weeks off because there's Christmas and vacations and whatever, right? 50 weeks, 30 terms a week, you're going to walk away with 1,500 new medical Spanish terms by this time next year. What could you do with those 1,500 new medical Spanish terms? What would those terms do for your listening comprehension? As you're listening to native speakers, how much more are you going to comprehend with those additional 1,500 terms? What about your ability to express yourself and communicate certain things related to your 5 patient profiles? Oh my gosh, it completely is game-changing to be able to build little by little over the course of a year 1,500. Let's say you go crazy and you say, you know what, I'm going to do 60 terms a week. Okay, well now we're at 3,000 medical Spanish terms over the course of the year. This is a huge, huge strategy for you to improve your medical Spanish over the course of time. The rule of 30 is very powerful. I hope you implement it. Okay, so we've got our 3 strategies down. Now let's look at the right content. How are you going to focus on the right content? You need to constantly seek input in Spanish. So be looking for input in Spanish because based on the input you get, that's what's going to guide your learning, your input. So that could be reading. It could be videos that you watch, could be podcasts that you listen to, it could be conversations that you're a part of, but you need Spanish input. If it's reading, for example, the right content is probably not Alice in Wonderland. The right content, even though they're great books, is probably not the Bernstein Bears. The right content is maybe the Mayo Clinic's patient education materials in Spanish. Maybe it's the National Institute of Health descriptions of certain conditions and health topics in Spanish. Maybe it's Medline Plus, looking up those topics that relate to your 5 patient profiles in Spanish. That's the right content. Print those articles out. Circle the word terms, highlight them, underline them. You can see the vocabulary in action. You can see that grammar that you need in action, and you get a sense for the language. You've got to find the right content. Okay? All right. Videos, podcasts, conversations along the same lines. Make sure that you're getting the right content. And when you are identifying your vocabulary to learn the terms that you want, the medical Spanish terminology that you need in order to be effective with your Spanish-speaking patients, make sure that you learn that vocabulary in both directions. You want to learn it from Spanish to English and from English to Spanish. Why? Why do you need to do that? Well, think about it. When you learn a term from Spanish to English, you're looking at the Spanish. You've got your flashcard, old school flashcard, right? Spanish on one side, English on the other. You're looking at the Spanish and you're producing the English. Okay, so you're starting from Spanish and going to English. What does that do for you? That's like when you are receiving Spanish from a patient and you are then converting that to English so that it makes sense in your head. That's going to build your comprehension. Let's flip it the other direction. Now you've got your card and you're looking at English and you're producing the Spanish. Well, what's that going to do? Until you are like pretty fluent, you're always going to be starting in English in your head. And so from that English, you then convert into Spanish and then you speak it with your patient, right? That's what you're studying when you go from English to Spanish. You're working on your expressive ability because you always start in English and then you produce in Spanish. And so when you are studying from English to Spanish, you're helping your production, your expression. When you are studying from Spanish to English, you're improving your reception of Spanish and making sense of it in English. Okay, so study it in both directions. Let's continue with the right content. It's a great idea to take a course. Take a course that gives you opportunities to speak Spanish because you don't need more learning. You need to practice speaking. Take a course that allows you to pace yourself, something that you can fit in to your schedule. And you know what? When you're active in a course, maybe it's not 30 minutes 3 times a week. Maybe it's 30 minutes 5 times a week because you've got some specific goals, specific time frame. And so maybe you have to ramp that up. But do something that allows you to pace yourself. Choose a course that has live instruction. Live instruction is so important. I can't tell you how many people and how many dollars have been wasted with just purchasing asynchronous content and then fizzling out, partway through. I mean, in my case, not when it comes to Spanish, but other things that I've wanted to learn online about, related to leading an organization or related to doing certain things online and how do I do this? And, I'll take a course that is exactly what I need, exactly what I want to know, and I'll get into it and I'll be good for a week or so. And then all of a sudden, life happens and I just start giving it less and less attention because there's not a live class that I have to show up for, prepare for, and be present at. You might consider finding a private instructor as well. Sometimes the group class situation just doesn't work. And so find a private instructor, an instructor that knows enough about your job and your functions at work, what it is you do with your patients so that they can be a good guide for you. Someone who's completely disconnected from your world and completely unfamiliar with your work as a healthcare professional probably isn't going to be a great language guide for you, even if they are awesome as a teacher or good at Spanish. You want someone who knows enough about your work and job functions to be able to help you along the way and help you identify the things you didn't realize you didn't know, kind of thing. A private instructor will help you not waste your time on unrelated language. So you should know that if you're looking for a course, we offer an amazing online medical Spanish course that includes all of those things. It includes online learning, live instruction, opportunities to practice, conversational partners, and all the medical Spanish terminology you could ever want. Mastering Medical Spanish is a course that we offer twice a year in the early fall and in the early winter. And so typically around September and January, February is when we're offering this course. There are 3 different levels for beginners, intermediates, and advanced level speakers. It is an amazing course. It's the product of our decades of work here at Common Ground International. It's our curriculum. It's amazing learning, and you build a really fun community that you're walking through with expert instructors. Scan this QR code if you'd like to learn more about the Mastering Medical Spanish course. If you're like me and you say, you know what, I want to sample first before I make a big investment, then try our free medical Spanish crash course. It is accredited for CME and CE, and we offer it twice a year also, right before we open registration for our full 10-week class. So we would love to have you participate in our free medical Spanish crash course. Again, this is just preceding the 10-week course, so that's early September and late January. That's when we're offering this crash course. We hope you can sign up, scan this QR code. That'll take you to a place where you can register and join us in our next free medical Spanish crash course. Okay, let's get on to our next component, is finding a helpful community. You need to find a helpful community to learn with. Could be friends, could be colleagues, could be acquaintances, but y'all are on the same path. Y'all are working on your Spanish to be better communicators with your Spanish-speaking patients. You'll keep each other accountable, and not only that, you probably need a leader. You probably need a leader with your community to help you along the way. One of the things that is important to know about is this idea of the level paradox. What's the level paradox? Well, the lower your level today in Spanish, the more skilled instructor you need to guide you. Conversely, the higher your level with Spanish right now, the less skilled of a native speaker or bilingual person needs to be in order to be helpful to you, because you've got enough of a foundation already. But as a beginner, you truly do need to find an excellent instructor, and an instructor that manages some English also, because I can tell you from experience, there's nothing more frustrating than, as a beginner, asking a question to someone who doesn't speak any English, or maybe they have enough to understand your question, but the answer is in Spanish. You're like, wait, how am I supposed to understand this answer if I don't even speak Spanish yet? So you do need someone who can help you a little bit with English as a beginner. But the higher your level in Spanish, the lower skills necessary probably in order to have an effective guide for Spanish. Hope that makes sense. Okay. Fruitful communication opportunities. You need communication opportunities that are actually going to yield the results that you want. And when you think about it, it makes a lot of sense. Your ability to speak Spanish is much like, strengthening a muscle. So language ability is like a muscle. And anyone who has any history with training, sports, physical fitness, you know that you are going to get better at what you practice, right? If you want to be a better long distance runner, you need to practice long distance running. Practicing as a sprinter isn't going to help you in your long distance running career, right? If you want to be a better Spanish speaker, you need to practice speaking, because practicing your reading and your writing isn't necessarily going to translate into your ability to speak. And so keep that in mind. If your use case for Spanish, for medical Spanish, is speaking to patients, you're not going to get there if all you do is read and write and listen to podcasts and match terms on Duolingo. You have to actually speak. You have to speak in full sentences. You have to communicate in order to get better at communicating. Not only do you have to, work the right muscles, so to speak, when it comes to language, your practice needs to be regular. Remember the rule of 30. Your practice needs to be guided by your goals. Think of your 5 patient profiles as your goals for Spanish. And ideally, your practice is guided by an instructor. Okay? So you've got to have fruitful communication opportunities. Again, reading, writing, listening are important, but if your use case is speaking and listening, you got to practice speaking and listening. All right. Immersion is the easiest way to maximize your exposure and to get speaking opportunities. So our last component was maximizing your opportunities, right? Your exposure to language. And so immersion is a funny word. People throw it around and they often apply it to scenarios and situations that it isn't. What is immersion? Let's start with what it's not. Immersion is not a cross your fingers travel experience. I'm going to Cancun and I'm going to immerse myself and it's going to be great. I'm going to pick up some Spanish on my vacation. Probably not. You're going to go to an all-inclusive resort. You're going to be speaking English because all those waiters and everybody's going to be speaking English to you. And yep, you might get off the premises for a while, but your tour guide's going to be speaking English to you. You're going to go sleep in a cushy hotel and you are not going to be immersed much at all. Okay. It's not a medical mission trip either, where you've got a translator there who is party to all of your communications with patients. And then once at the end of the day, you go back to your cushy hotel and you have a wonderful time. You do great work in a community that has needs, but it's not really a language immersion experience because you're not being intentional about Spanish exposure and Spanish practice, right? Immersion is intentionality with every aspect of your trip. Every single thing that you do on your program is guided toward, leading toward you improving your ability to speak Spanish. So you go to a non-touristy destination, which means you're not going to have a bunch of English speakers around, which also means that the community is probably not going to be as adept at speaking English because they don't get many English speakers. And so you can improve your chances of hearing Spanish while you're traveling and not hearing English from locals while you're traveling. You're going to look for immersive lodging. Yes, it would be wonderful to stay in a cushy hotel, but all you're really doing is talking to the bellhop, the receptionist, and the waiters in the restaurant. You want to stay with a local family. Immersive lodging not only has you surrounded by Spanish in a family context, but you're actually living the Spanish language and living the culture of that area that you're in. That is immersive lodging, and that's what helps you truly move the needle on your Spanish. You want some formal Spanish guidance? Yes, that looks like a class or a tutor while you're traveling. and you'll want structured opportunities to practice. Sure, it's great to go sit down at a cafe and try to chat up your server, or chat up the person at this table sitting next to you, or even being as bold as sitting down with someone and trying to have a conversation with them. Sure, that's great. But is that conversation truly going to help you in your clinical conversations with patients? Probably not. So you want to set up structured opportunities to practice your clinical conversations while you're immersed. Let's keep talking about immersion and why it's amazing. Immersion is so amazing because you eliminate your day-to-day distractions in life. I mean, think about it. You've got bills to pay, you've got work to go to, you've got family obligations, you've got errands you need to run, you've got a million things to do in your day-to-day life that pull you away from, distract you from carving out 30 minutes 3 times a week, right? You've got so much going on, so many distractions, but when you travel abroad, you eliminate 90% of those distractions and you're able to actually focus on the language, your goals, your Spanish progress. You are completely surrounded by Spanish. You can't escape the Spanish. You have guided learning because you chose to implement some tutoring or some classes while you travel. You have never-ending opportunities to practice Spanish because of the way that you are doing immersion. You've set it up so that you're completely surrounded by Spanish. Sometimes people ask me, you know what? I don't want to go abroad and take classes. Is that really that important? And I would argue that it is. Implementing, adding, including Spanish classes to your immersion experience is essential. There's really no replacement for it. Why? Because when you set up an immersion program right, you have got Spanish a la fire hozo. It is so much input. It's so much language chaos happening all around. You've got Spanish here, Spanish over there, Spanish when you're sleeping, Spanish when you're trying to rest in your host family. You've got just so much Spanish, rapid speak, rapid fire, constant. When you get into a class, classes give you an opportunity to kind of slow down, make sense of all that chaotic input. And it's like in the movies where, that guy with superhuman powers, he can see the bullet coming and he can just dodge the bullet and everything is in slow motion. That's what classes do for you on immersion. Everything's so chaotic, but you step into a class, you've got a teacher, maybe some other students in a group class, and you can begin to make sense of all the language chaos that surrounds you. Whereas at home, maybe going to Spanish class and, they're going to make me speak, it's so embarrassing. That's what it's like when you take a Spanish class at home. But when you're on immersion, your class is now like your safe haven because the whole world slows down and you can begin to make sense of all the things that you're experiencing while you're traveling. If you're looking for an amazing medical Spanish immersion program, we would love for you to consider ours. We travel twice a year to Latin America in the winter and in the summer months. Scan this QR code. You can learn all about our medical Spanish immersion programs. One of the most amazing things about them is that you don't have to travel alone. You can include your family. You can include a partner. You can include some coworkers, earn some CME, CE credits. And if you are truly traveling alone, you're not, because you've got a group of like-minded folks on program with you. You've got the Common Ground team supporting you day in and day out on your program. So it's an amazing experience built to truly rocket your Spanish forward and give you a serious booster shot, per se, to your Spanish. Okay, to review, we're going to wrap it up. The best way to learn medical Spanish includes effective strategies. We talked about 3. It includes the right content, narrowing your focus and focusing in on the things that you have to learn to be effective with your patients. It includes a helpful community, people to walk shoulder to shoulder with you, because it takes time and it can be frustrating, but you've got friends, you've got people, community around you. It includes fruitful communication opportunities. You have to practice what it is you want to be able to do at work with your patients. And it includes maximizing your exposure to the language. Common Ground International has been around since 2001. We are experts in medical Spanish, and we truly are your best medical Spanish resource. If you would like to join us, we would be glad to include you in our MMS series of courses, 3 levels, beginning, intermediate, and advanced. Scan that QR code for more information. We would love to include you on an immersion program, winter months, summer months. Bring your family, bring your friends. We would love to have you join us. We would love to have you learn more about interpreter training. If you or staff at work need to improve their skills as a medical Spanish interpreter, we've got a class for you. If you need to get to a place where you are certified to speak Spanish in a clinical setting, join our medical Spanish certification, sign up for free, take the tests, get certified, produce your certificate to your institution, your employer, and say, hey, these leaders in the field think that I have responsible enough Spanish to speak directly with my patients, and I don't have to wait around for the interpreter to show up, or I don't have to deal with bad translation services over the phone. All right, friends, keep up the great work studying medical Spanish, learning medical Spanish. You truly do make a difference in the communities where you live and work. Every ounce of energy and resources you put into this makes someone else's day a little bit better when you can speak directly to them in Spanish. Thanks for being a part of Common Ground. Nos vemos la próxima vez. Ciao.